Well, this is the Louisiana Tech team that was building some pretty good momentum at the start of last season until it all fell apart and they ended up losing their last 6 games, which led to a disappointing season for Sonny Kumbi's group. However, you look at 2024 and a lot of teams in Conference USA trying to battle it out for those middle spots. This is going to be one of them here. An improvement is expected in Shreveport out of this program. Well, are they going to be able to crack the postseason here in 2024? You're about to find out what I think here in this video. What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today, and I want to welcome you to my channel as well as welcome you to prediction season. Welcome back to prediction season. It better be welcome back to prediction season because, guys, we are almost done. So if this is the first video of mine you're watching, first of all, thank you so much. You have no idea how much this helps support my channel, and it supports it in just way more ways than you can even imagine. But hey, go back and watch all my other prediction videos. Any one you're interested in, could be 1, could be 10, could be all 100 plus that I have up already on my channel. Just thank you so much for the support this prediction season. Please continue to support my channel by continuing to watch my videos. And if you're as big of a college football nerd as I am, you're going to want to finish prediction season because I'm talking about all 134 teams, and you're going to want to hear what I have to say during the season, which means you got to hit that subscribe button down below. But you can also help support the channel in many more ways. You can like, you can comment, you can share, and anything else you do to interact with the channel helps to support it. But now let's dive on into Sonny Kumbi's Bulldogs here in 2024. We'll take a deep dive into the offense, into the defense, and then at the end of the video, we'll go through the football schedule, give it a good old game-by-game preview and prediction. But there are a couple more things I got to tell you before we get started, such as right over here will be the stats a team put up either offensively or defensively last season. And of course, for all your viewing pleasures out there, right below the team's logo, I have went ahead and put the team's coaching staff. This team does not run with a true offensive coordinator that I could find. Scott Parr and Nathan Young, the tight end and offensive line coaches respectively, act as co-offensive coordinators. So now let's go ahead and dive on in to the Louisiana Tech Bulldogs here in 2024. And I mean, overall, this was not a bad offense last year. Now, they were led by Hank Bachmeier at quarterback, and he did not start every game last season, but in the games he did start, look, overall was a really solid quarterback here for this team. Through 269 passes, 2,058 yards, 10 touchdowns, 5 picks. Yeah, maybe that could have been a little bit better. Touchdown numbers could have been higher, and relative to his touchdown to interception rate, you would have liked to see it be a little bit less prolific on the interceptions. Again, when you just look at the rate, 2-1 is not a great touchdown to interception ratio, but had 67% completion percentage. He's decided to take his talents over to the Power 4, where I believe he's going with the Wake Forest Demon Deacon. So you lose your primary starter off of last season, but the guy that got a lot of playing time last year is a guy by the name of Jack Turner. He threw 147 passes, completing 57% of them for 1,017 yards, 5 touchdowns, but the same amount of interceptions as Bachmeier and 5 picks. Now, I think that interception number is going to go down for him this season, as I do expect him to be the primary starter for this Bulldogs team. And overall, I just think you're going to see some improvement in Jack Turner's game. Yes, there were times where he kind of got thrusted into that starting role, and in a lot of ways, honestly fared pretty solid. Now, again, he showed his inexperience and youngness, and there were a lot of times where he just made some bad decisions, wasn't that great with the football, whatever. But Jack Turner, I think, is going to see some good improvement this year. Not a guy that's going to use his legs a whole lot, but did have 2 rushing touchdowns last season and was a better rusher statistically than what Bachmeier was. You do return Ty Keys and Evan Bullock to this room as well. They'll play backup roles this season. But Jack Turner's going to be that starter for me, and I think you're going to see him improve his game from a year ago, and it's going to lead to some pretty good things for this Louisiana Tech offense. Will it be as good as Bachmeier? We'll have to wait and see. But I think it's still going to be solid quarterback play for the Bulldogs nonetheless. Running back room, Tyree Shelton and Keldrick Moody are 2 names that you will see gone due to graduation. Moody had 149 yards last year. Now I mention him first because, hey, you saved the best for last, right? Well, Tyree Shelton was the best rusher on this team last year. 97 carries, 551 yards, and 5 touchdowns for him last year, while also losing Jarvis Thornton to the transfer portal, team's 3rd leading rusher. That's your 1st, 3rd, and 4th leading rushers, all respectively, Shelton, Thornton, Moody in that order, that are gone due to various reasons. The top 2 there due to graduation, and of course Thornton to the transfer portal. You do, however, get your 2nd leading rusher back, and he actually led your team in rushing touchdowns last year. That was Keith Willis Jr. He had 288 yards, 51 carries, and 7 touchdowns last season. Marquise Crosby will also be coming back, a depth piece last year that only got 1 carry, but was able to break that run for 20 yards. So, I mean, 20 yards per carry. Yeah, you're going to see him get a lot more carries than that here in 2024. And you do get Denario Davenport, who is over from Texas State. He very well may end up being that primary starter with Keith Willis as the backup, but you could also see those two guys split carries. It just depends on what Sonny Kumbi sees within those two guys talent wise and what they decide to do strategically with this team this season. Wide receiver room, you do lose a couple of really, really good pieces, including your top two, I should say top three leading receivers from last year. Smoke Harris is gone due to graduation, 796 yards, 4 touchdowns on a team high 83 catches last season. Cyrus Allen had 778 yards, 4 touchdowns on 46 catches, so almost the same amount of yards as Harris with about half the receptions. Again, really good threat in the wide receiver room. And then Kyle Maxwell, 20 catches for 363 yards and a couple touchdowns for him last year. And out of the tight end room, you do lose Ryan Rivera, who was the team's top receiving tight end and fifth leading receiver on the team, 174 yards on 13 catches for him last season. So, okay, well, who do you return? Again, your first, second, third, and fifth leading receiver are gone, meaning your fourth leading receiver is back. That was True Edwards. 23 catches, 284 yards, 2 touchdowns. Very well could end up being the team's top target here in 2024. Dakotas Crawford does return, and you figure he's going to play a much bigger role than what he played in the offense this season. The former Nebraska transfer and one of the best names in college football is going to end up, I think, playing a pretty decent role in the wide receiver room this season. Marlon Jackson and Solo Lewis will also be some names you see, as well as these two transfers. Jimmy Holiday is a transfer coming in here to this program. I will tell you from where in just a second, but he could end up being a pretty solid piece here to this offensive room. He's over from Western Kentucky. And then you do get a guy by the name of Ibrahim Abdul Fatim, and hopefully I'm saying that name right, but he's a former member of the Bowling Green Falcons that most recently, I believe, is transferring over from Alabama A&M, and he figures to get some starting minutes, maybe very high second string minutes, but he's going to have a pretty big impact the pass catching room, as well as this guy and Nate Jones, as well as Eli Finley and John Locke. All those guys, of course, out of the tight end room. Okay, offensive line time. You lose some really good talent off of last year's team. Abraham Delphin has gone due to graduation, while Dakota White, Carson Bruno, and Elijah Bowser are all off and gone through the transfer portal. Apologies for that little mishap graphically there. In fact, I'll fix that because it's going to bother me now that I see it. And it won't be fixed for you viewers for long because we're going to talk about the defense here soon. But hey, my OCD is happy. Okay, let's talk about the offensive line returners here in 2024. Burt Hale, Jaron Gilbert, Kenneth Bannister, and Landon Nelson all return to the offensive line. They're all going to be in contention for starting roles this year, as well as these three transfers: Ashanti Cole, Daniel Keys, and Zarian McGill. All three of those guys, according to ourlads.com, are projected starters, which makes sense to me. You lose a lot on the offensive line. You supplement through the portal. Those three guys probably going to end up playing big roles anyway, even if they don't start. But when you overall take a look at this offense, what do you get in return when Jack Turner, I think, inevitably improves his game this season? At least that's the hope for you. What do you get with him in place of Hank Bachmeier? How good is he going to be? I think that's the first thing you have to look at with this offense. What is Jack Turner going to give you with the quarterback position? You saw some really good things in moments from him last year. You want that on a consistent basis if you are a Bulldog fan. Losing those running backs really does hurt. Losing those wide receivers really does hurt. How does the depth play up from there? Well, depth roles last season. What does the offensive line look like? There are a lot of question marks on this offense, but I think at the end of the day, even if all of them don't get answered, if most of them gets answered like Jack Turner plays, maybe the running back room struggles, but the wide receiver room fits in and the offensive line gels. I think overall you're still looking at a pretty solid offense, even if every question doesn't get answered 100% throughout the course of the season. You go ahead and take a look at this. Oh, and by the way, before we move on to the defense, yeah, it's a third down offense that has to improve. Only 30.1% on third down last season. They got to stay on the field a little bit longer here to keep this defense off the field. Because, look, while the secondary, and no, I did not flip those numbers around, because again, this past defense really was pretty solid last season, and it does lose a lot of talent, which we'll get to here, that could see it regress in 2024. But this rush defense was abysmal, and there's no good way around that. There's no better way to say that. This was just not a very good rush defense last season. It loses some pretty impactful pieces from the defensive front seven from last season, including one guy that is gone and off to the NFL, and that is a guy by the name of Rayson Williams. And hopefully I've said that name correctly, but he had 23 tackles, 2.5 sacks, and even though, again, the stat line is not going to blow you away, his impact was felt on the football field. You could definitely see him playing on Sundays now. Deshaun Hall is gone due to graduation here. Another pretty solid piece. He had 3.5 sacks, which actually led the team last season. So you're losing your sack leader again, as well as Williams, who had 2.5 sacks. So that's 6 sacks of production out of a team that only had 16 sacks last year. That's gone. That's another big thing. This defense wasn't great at forcing sacks last season, which obviously has to get better, but we'll talk more about that later. What do you have on this defensive line? Well, Michael Clark is going to be coming back. I believe, yes, was the team's leading tackler among defensive linemen last year with 40 of them. So you get that production back, as well as Zion Nason, Jesse Evans, Jaden Gray, David Blay, and Jadan Burnett. Hopefully I'm saying that name correctly, as well as a couple pieces from the portal. Travell Vivians and Adam Lamar both come in here to this defensive line room. Both of those guys are projected depth pieces here, but again, could see some starting minutes at times this season. You're just looking overall for this defensive line to gel together nicely and to see some pretty significant improvement here this season. Linebacker room, well, you do lose Jeslord Boateng, who was the team's leading tackler last season, 93 tackles, a sack, and a pass defended. You'll also be losing Hugh Davis, who was another pretty sizable part here to this defense, 18 tackles last season. Again, was more of a backup, but either way, provided some impactful minutes. He's gone due to graduation. And then Brevin Randall is going to be gone off of this team as well. Brevin Randall has entered the transfer portal, 74 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 pass defended, 4th leading tackler for the Bulldogs last season. Linebacker room, okay, who do you have coming back? Well, Zach Zimmos and Colby Fields will be returners, while Jamarcus Jones and Sifa Leota are transfers coming in that, again, I believe both of them are going to be depth role pieces for this team this year, at least according to or at least not according to 24/7, according to ourlads.com, but they could see some starting minutes at points throughout the course of the season. Defensive back room, again, as I've said, was pretty solid last year. Well, you're going to be losing a lot of those bigger pieces here to the transfer portal. No, not to the portal, my apologies, due to graduation. I was looking at the special teams room there. A lot of these guys have moved on and have graduated. Cecil Singleton Jr., Willie Roberts, and Keyshawn Paul out of the cornerback room are all gone. Singleton had 74 tackles last year. He did play a lot of safety, but did leave this team due to graduation, at least as far as I could tell. Him listed everywhere as a corner, so that is what I am going to list him as here as well. So he leaves this team as a corner, but could play safety last year as well. Willie Roberts, another very impactful piece, led the team with 12 passes defended last year, and then Keyshawn Paul, just another pretty solid player. All those guys, again, gone due to graduation. And Miles Hurd, really good safety for the team last year, 88 tackles, 4 pass defended, no more football for him. He's graduated as well. So the defensive back room, what do you got? Well, Cedric Woods is going to be coming back here in the cornerback room. 2 interceptions, led the team last season, team that only had 5 picks last year. Well, Cedric Woods had 2 of them, so hey, he had 40% of the interceptions for the team last year. That's a big get back. Jamal Shelby Jr. also returns, while Jordan Miles and Navarian Benson are transfers that come in. And in the safety room, DeMarcus Griffin Taylor, Michael Richard, Roderick Roberson, and Isaiah McIlvain, and hopefully I'm saying all those names right. They all come back to this defensive back room. Roberson had 30 tackles for the team here last season. And again, some other pretty good pieces come back when you talk about Michael Richard, 32 tackles for him last year. Griffin Taylor had 17. So you're getting some solid production back, as well as a ton of transfers. Jakari Foster, Jordan Morgan, who could see starting time, and Blake Thompson all come in through the portal. And now to special teams, because, hey, kickers are people too. You know we got to show them some love. Blake Ochsendorf, and I'm probably butchering that last name, but he's gone out of the punting room, and Jacob Barnes has gone out of the kicking room, both through the portal. So you bring in Patrick Ray to do punting and Buck Buchanan to do kicking. But all those guys are coming back, but we'll see increased roles here in 2024. So overall, when you take a look at this defense, I mean, you just need to see improvement. How good is the secondary going to be with all that you lose? You're going to need some guys to step up and the transfers to fit in well. I still think the secondary is going to be pretty solid, but you need this defensive line room to gel. Because if this pass rush and this rush defense doesn't get better as a whole, and I'll even say this about the secondary, keep the yards per game where it is, this team has got to force more turnovers. They only had 9 forced last year. It's going to be an improved defense if all those things happen, but again, that's a lot of question marks and a lot of things to try to do here all in one season. You take a look at their schedule. Let's break it down for you. Any game at home is going to be underlined, while any game on the road is in italics or that slanted text. Any game you see in green is a game that I think the Bulldogs are going to win fairly easily, while any game in yellow will be a close competitive game that I still see the Bulldogs being able to win. Any game in red is a loss, and it starts out with a green win. Oh no, it doesn't. I highlighted this one in yellow. Okay, well maybe I'm figuring that nickel here Nickel State can give them a sort of run for their money here, and maybe if you're looking for an FCS to FBS upset, this could be a potential game right here that you would look at. But still, overall, a game that I think Louisiana Tech is going to be able to win heading into their first bye week of the season. I know they actually have two really early bye weeks this year, so they get through both of their bye weeks this season relatively quickly. So after your first bye week, you got to go on the road and play the NC State Wolfpack. And I think any way you try to slice this one, this is just going to end up being a loss for the Louisiana Tech Bulldogs. Grayson McCall is in. Jordan Waters is in. Some really talented wide receiver pieces come in through the portal. We know the style of defense that Dave Doran's group plays. And I mean, just overall, NC State's going to be one of the more talented teams in the ACC this season. They will be no match for, or I should say, Louisiana. I don't know why I'm mixing up that saying. What I'm trying to say, NC State going to be able to beat Louisiana Tech, handing the Bulldogs what I project their first loss of the season. But now you get into this non-conference game with Tulsa, and I think things get really interesting when you talk about this game, because I think both of these teams are fairly similar, at least when you talk about not necessarily what they need to improve, but similar in sort of the way that I think they could definitely finish out the season, because they're both very interesting teams. They both still have some holes to fill, but overall, teams that can compete for a spot in a bowl game. I think Louisiana Tech's going to end up winning this one. Now, you bring in a lot of talented wide receiver transfers for the Tulsa Golden Hurricane to hopefully up that room. Kirk Francis, Cardell Williams are going to be battling it out for that quarterback position there. You return some really good running back talent, but defensively, you got a lot of portal pieces coming in, much like Louisiana Tech. And this one, really, for me, guys, is a 50-50 crapshoot, because I think Louisiana Tech improves in a lot of ways. Tulsa improves in a lot of ways. And just a game that overall, I decided to go with the team that has home field advantage. That's the Louisiana Tech Bulldogs. I think they're going to be able to win that one, and I think it leads them to a 2-1 record. However, they do lose this one on the road against Florida International and FIU. Going to be another one of those teams this year in the ranks of the in the ranks of Conference USA. We got a lot of them, if you haven't noticed, that are going to be sitting right around that 6-6 to 5-7 mark. I think they see some improvement, at least record wise, from last year. Keon Jenkins is going to be coming back to play quarterback. You got some pretty solid transfers coming into this program, although you've kind of peppered them throughout the roster. A lot of good returners on the offensive line. On the defensive side, FIU is trending towards being a pretty competitive team in the conference. I think they stay that way, and I think it's going to end up being a win for the Panthers there in week 5. Your second bye week comes here after that game. So already, what is this, 6 weeks into the season now? You have a bye week in week 2 and week 6. Your bye weeks are already gone. Okay, so you got to play 8 straight games. Well, you start out with the win there. The extra bye week on top of this being now a weekday game, you get technically a little less time to prepare for it, but usually teams with the home field advantage tend to fare a little bit better in these sorts of games. But you got to watch out for the Blue Raiders this year. Nick Vadiato is going to be a dangerous weapon at quarterback, and he's got a lot of talent around him. And overall, Middle Tennessee, I do like, but Derek Mason's still trying to get back into the coaching realm. He's going to see his struggles this year. Middle Tennessee might see some inconsistencies, so they try to implement that system. This being one of them, I think that they lose here to the Louisiana Tech Bulldogs, even though I think Nick Vadiato clearly the better quarterback, and I think they're the more talented team, but Louisiana Tech is able to pick up that win. Even though I see New Mexico State not being that great this season, I think they have enough pieces to pull out a couple of wins. This one I see being one of them, and this one needs no further explanation than it's just one of those games where Louisiana Tech is going to struggle. You have a short week to prepare for that one, and you have to go on the road after what could be a really close competitive game against the Middle Tennessee Blue Raiders. I just think you end up tripping up there and losing that one. But you come back home in week 9, and you beat the UTEP Miners. Scotty Walden is coming in, and while I love him as a head coach, and I do really like the roster that he has constructed here with UTEP, a lot of transfers from Austin Peay coming over there with that team. I think there are going to be some moments here where everything doesn't quite work out. The players don't necessarily follow the system. The system doesn't get implemented in the way it should. Whatever you want to say about that, I think Louisiana Tech beats UTEP. You got to go on the road and play Sam Houston. And even though I don't think the Bearcats are going to be that great this year, I think this is a loss here as well. just a good theme that you're seeing throughout Conference USA. I think home field advantage is going to matter. And Sam Houston can improve in a lot of ways. I mean, you're getting Jace Bauer to come in at quarterback. He was fairly solid for the Central Michigan Chippewas last season. Some good talent overall does come back in that defensive side of the ball as well. But overall, Louisiana Tech might be more talented, but I do think that Sam Houston with the home field advantage is going to be able to get this one done. And that just starts a really rough stretch here for this Bulldogs team because I have you losing your next three. Granted, they're all the very talented teams and teams that are probably more talented than Louisiana Tech, one of them being against the Jacksonville State Gamecocks, a team that I just have being a lot better than Louisiana Tech last year. That FCS to FBS transition was no problem for Jacksonville State. Logan Smothers is still at quarterback. He returns from last season, even though I believe it was Zion Webb is his name. That was the primary starter last season. A lot of talent comes back. Love the system that they have there under Rich Rod, and that'll be a win for the Gamecocks, meaning a loss for the Bulldogs. I also think it's going to be a loss against the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers. Still a team that, yes, loses Austin Reed, loses Malachi Corley. You bring TJ Finley in at quarterback. If he's anything like he was last year, I mean, that's just going to be a really, really good quarterback for Western Kentucky last season. If he can put up that stat line, still going to be one of the better teams in Conference USA. And you're also not beating the Razorbacks, who, much like NC State, power or program that has a lot of really good and superior talent. You're just not beating them. But this one also doesn't need a whole lot of explanation because I just don't think Kennesaw State's going to be that great of a football team this season. They were not a great team in the FCS ranks, and now they are jumping up a level of play to the FBS on top of losing a ton of talent from last year. I just think it's going to be a really, really tough struggle for the Owls here in their first season as an FBS team. And they lose to the Bulldogs, leading them to a 5-7 record. Again, you're seeing quite a good theme here with teams in Conference USA kind of hovering around the 5-7 mark here. But it really is that tricky to try to figure things out here. Louisiana Tech is another one of those teams where, hey, if everything goes right and things fall into place, they can get to a bowl game and maybe even 6-6 as a ceiling is a little too low for them. But overall, I like some of the talent that's on this team. If the pieces fit in well, they can be pretty solid. But overall, falling short of a bowl game is where I have them. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Remember to play hard, but tailgate harder. And we'll talk about the East Carolina Pirates in my next video. Goodbye.